Welcome everybody to today's webinar, AIA Housing and AIA HUD Secretaries Awards, brought to you by Open Architecture Collaborative and the AIA Housing Knowledge Communities and PDI International. Our first speaker will be Jamie Blosser. She is the Executive Director of the Santa Fe Institute, and she was the 2016 Housing Awards Jury Chair. Our next speaker will be Denise Everson. She is the chair of the American Institute of Architects Housing and Community Development Network and a consultant with the Connecticut Green Bank working on the multifamily energy efficiency demonstration pilot. Our next speaker will be Rachel Levitt. She is the director of the Research Utilization Division of the Office of Policy Development and Research, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD. She manages several award programs, including the AIA Awards and the coordination of the efforts with the department's programs. Our next speaker will be Jim Cutler. He's the founding partner of Cutler Anderson Architects and is known for his environmentally sensitive and sustainable work and his responsiveness to place, program, and cultural circumstances. And we have Catherine Baker. She is a principal at Landon Bone Baker Architects. If you have any questions today, please submit them to the chat box, which should be on the right of your screen. Any technical questions will be answered right away. Content-related questions will be answered during the Q&A at the end of the presentation. Please take a moment to look over the copyright materials, information, and the compliance statement. The course description is today, in its 16th year, the Housing Awards program was established to emphasize the importance of good housing as a necessity of life, a sanctuary for the human spirit, and a valuable national resource. The AIA HUD Secretaries Award recognizes excellence in affordable housing architecture, neighborhood design, participatory design, and accessibility. In 2016, from a highly competitive group of entries, 10 projects were selected for the AIA Housing Awards and 4 projects were selected for the AIA HUD Secretaries Awards. This webinar will provide a deeper knowledge of these awards programs, which are managed by the Housing and Community Development Network. We will present the 2016 awarded projects, discuss some details about their design and construction, and we will provide a few of the jury's comments about the projects. And please take a moment to look over the learning objectives. We'll learn about the AIA Housing Awards and the AIA Secretary Awards and the 14 projects that were awarded in 2016 and some of the specific details that relate to accessibility, affordability, community connectivity, and physical, social, and mental well-being. And I'd like to introduce Jamie Blosser.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us on the webinar today. This agenda, we're going to have a few of us, Jamie, Denise, Rochelle. All of us will talk a little bit about the vision and process of these awards programs and go into more detail on the 2016 award winners. And then we have 2 of the award winners who will also present. That's Jim Cutler of Cutler Anderson Architects and Catherine Baker of Landon Bone Baker Architects. So we'll have a little bit of time to go into more detail on each of their projects, and then have a little bit of time at the end to really go through some questions that you all may have. But to start us off, I'd like to ask Denise Everson, who is the chair of our Housing and Community Development Network, to say a few words about this knowledge community and the awards program.
Good afternoon, everybody. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, perfect. So I would like to welcome you all to this great webinar. I look forward to learning more about and seeing more about our 2016 awardees. So on behalf of the Housing and Community Development Network, which was formerly known as the Housing Knowledge Community, for those of you who have been around the AIA for years, we recently changed our name. So we are now the Housing and Community Development Network. We have over 10,000 AIA members in this particular knowledge community. We administer, as stated before, both the AIA Housing Awards and the AIA HUD Secretaries Award programs. And each year, one of our members on our executive committee serves on the jury. In addition to these wonderful awards, the Housing and Community Development Network, we also administer monthly webinars, professional exchange trips. Our last one was to China in 2014. We do a yearly pre-convention workshop highlighting trending housing issues. We also do various convention housing sessions and a joint research innovation grant with the Small Project Practitioners Knowledge Community, and finally a peer-to-peer network. More of what we do can be found on AIA's Knowledge Net, so please, when you get a moment, just look through Knowledge Net and check out the exciting things that the Housing and Community Development Network is doing. Today, I would like to just briefly tell you why the AIA HUD Secretaries Award and the AIA Housing Awards are so important to us. As stated earlier, both have separate missions, but we are very, very happy this year to award 4 projects for the AIA HUD Secretaries Award. It is a joint award with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development and the AIA. We've been doing this for quite some time, and whatever city the convention is in, the AIA National Convention, HUD usually participates and jointly awards this really nice. They have a really nice award that an acrylic award that they present, but it's a joint award between HUD and AIA. Second award that we're going to discuss today is the AIA Housing Awards. The mission was mentioned earlier, but I wanted to just give a background that this is the 16th year of the AIA Housing Awards, and this year in 2016 we awarded 10 projects. So I'm really looking forward to hearing some questions at the end of this webinar, and just looking forward to hearing how these projects are going to be received by the webinar participants. So in addition to today's webinar, we as a knowledge community, we promote our 2 award programs through a beautiful coffee table style awards booklet, which is available at the AIA Knowledge Net site. It's a free download. This is our 4th year of publishing this awards booklet. It highlights juries' comments as well as very great images from each of the projects that win one of these 2 awards. Before I depart, I would like to give a special thanks to Jamie Blosser for her leadership on the 2016 jury for both the awards. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Denise. We really rely on Denise's leadership this year. She's been fantastic, so thank you. And she also was leading our awards ceremony that we do every year at the convention, which is a picture up here. And so I will start by sort of talking a little bit and specifically about the AIA Housing Awards, and then I'll hand it off to Rochelle from HUD to talk in more detail about the AIA HUD Secretary Awards. So the jury this year for the AIA Housing Awards was myself, and typically we always have a past chair of the Housing and Community Development Network. We always have a journalist, so this year was Ariella Cohen, who's the editor-in-chief of Next City, Kevin Harris, who's FAIA out of Baton Rouge, David Lee, who's also FAIA from Solon Lee in Massachusetts, and Suman Sorg, who's also FAIA, Sorg and Associates in Washington, D.C. So we really, with the jury each year, we make sure to have a diverse range of disciplines and practices. There are 4 categories for the AIA Housing Awards, and they are here. We awarded 10, so this year we had 5 in the 1 and 2 family custom residences. We had 2 in the multifamily housing category and 3 in specialized housing. The way that the AIA Housing Awards work is a little bit different, as you'll see with AIA HUD Secretary Awards, is that the jury can decide to award more than 1 in each category. This year, we did not have any awards in the 1 and 2 family production homes, and that is something that is a very important category for us. We want to promote design excellence in the production homes category. And so we do encourage anyone on the call to please consider submitting an application this year if that is something that's your specialty. So the 1 and 2 family custom residences are recognizing outstanding designs for custom and remodeled homes for specific clients. So the distinction between the custom residences and the production homes is that the production homes award recognizes excellent design of homes built specifically for the speculative market. In the multifamily housing category, we are recognizing outstanding multifamily housing design, but that can be both low and high density projects. That can be both for public and private clients. And there's also mixed use projects that can be considered in this category. The jury, in terms of this category, looks at the integration of the building or buildings into their context, looks at open and recreational space, transportation options, and features that contribute to livable communities. And so that is something that, as the Housing and Community Development Network, we're also looking very much at the community development aspects of those homes, of that category. In specialized housing, we're looking, and you'll see there's a very diverse mix this year, and so you see that that really can be outstanding design of housing specifically that's meeting unique needs of other specialized housing types. So what we see in this category can be single room occupancy residences, independent living for the disabled, residential rehab programs, residential halls and student housing. It can be many other things as well. And so you'll see that mix in the awards this year. I think there's a little bit of feedback, so if someone's on the phone who hasn't muted, please do so. Thank you. The selection criteria really does focus on design excellence, but there are many other things that the jury looks at. We look at sustainability and affordability as it relates to, in particular, multifamily and specialized housing categories. We look at social impact, innovation, durability, whether the project really addresses the natural and built context, and also whether the project meets the specific needs of the client. Entries are weighed on individual merit, not in competition with one another, and that's very strongly put forth in the process. Projects are also strongly encouraged to meet the energy reduction goals established in the AIA Sustainable Architectural Practice Position Statement and the AIA 2030 commitment, which currently calls for a minimum 70% reduction in energy use from regional baseline. So last year's deadline was November 20th. The deadline for this year has not been announced yet, but I think everyone should expect it to be about the same time frame. And then those get awarded in the spring, and we have the ceremony at convention. So I will go into starting with the 1 and 2 family production homes. There we go. I'm sorry, custom homes. We're going to start talking about those. Those were 5 total this year, and we tend to get quite a few submittals in this category. Very competitive. And just a little bit about the home. This is the Hog Pen Creek Retreat by Lakeside Architects. It's in Austin, Texas. The house was designed to connect to the outdoors. This connection begins as you step onto the boardwalk that you see, which serves as a circulation sign and it goes down to a pier on Lake Austin. It basically serves as an organizing element for interior and outdoor living spaces. This project is nestled in a grove of oaks and pecans, and the project was carefully sited and designed such that no existing trees had to be removed. And some of the jury comments were that this really felt like a fully cohesive design strategy with water and nature being primary influences. It feels very place-based and perfect for its setting in Texas. Artful composition of masses, delicate placement amidst mature landscapes, and creek waterfront views. It was also felt that there was very nice details with the mild industrial bent. There was an honesty and clarity in the design that was refreshing. This is the Independence Pass residence by Bowen Savinsky Jackson, and this is a home in Colorado overlooking the Nature Conservancy's North Star Preserve, which is a 175-acre tract of open space on the Roaring Fork River. This was conceived as a floating pavilion. The upper level has continuous interior views, and the ceiling appears to hover slightly over the living spaces. The interior palette of natural wood and stone and metal combined with a series of soft gray paint colors does have a few unexpected moments. The kitchen back wall encloses mechanical functions as well as a structural steel lateral X-brace frame. And the jury comments thought that this was a very handsome project. It blended beautifully with the landscape. What could have been an overly austere design becomes a more playful array of geometries and colors. And the use of light was deeply appreciated, whether it was protected using overhangs or otherwise open, such as at the skylight at the fireplace. They thought it was beautiful use of stone and lines to frame views of conservation land. A stunning house totally attuned to its Aspen setting with spectacular views at every angle. The Island Residence, also a Bowen Savinsky Jackson project, is in Hawaii. And here the clients were looking for a flexible living space for a family of 4, but also to celebrate the client's love of cooking, gardening, and hosting. They wanted a meaningful connection with the landscape and to maximize natural daylight. Given Hawaii's highly corrosive coastal environment with intense sunlight and tropical storms, the durability of building components was paramount. The deep roof eaves extend outward, providing shelter and prolonging the lifespan of the materials underneath. Durable copper roofing and wall paneling complement the natural wood finishes, developing a rich patina that varies with the exposure. The jury felt that they really appreciated the idiosyncrasies of the design and the deeply context-driven approach. It was felt that this was very unique in place-based with the sensual tactile curves supporting a very comfortable indoor and outdoor lifestyle. It was felt that this design did an excellent job that was very place-based, marrying modernism with handcrafted details, and it was an exciting take on the vernacular with cultural references to both Hawaii and Japan. The Oak Ridge House, designed by Duval Decker Architects, this was felt to be an interesting house that really highlighted a particular way of clients' needs of living while encouraging the family to take special care of the outdoor environment. And the house was shaped to draw the outdoors in and lure the family out. The public and living space as a vessel of light with varying plays of light throughout the day. The room is never simply an interior. Boundaries of space are indeterminate, alive, and negotiable. Materials and assemblies were chosen for character, economy, sustainability, and durability. The structure is exposed throughout the interior and provides textures and patterns. The jury very much thought that this was a very sophisticated palette and design that allowed for much interplay of light, color, and texture. It was an understated and incredibly well-designed home with multiple functions of built-in features. The Newburgh residence by Cutler Anderson Architects. We will hear more from Jim Cutler today. This is a single-family, 1,400 square foot residence that was designed to broaden the owner's emotional connection to the living world. The architect chose the site of an overgrown man-made pond in the area of the owner's farm that was not conducive to cultivation. The jury thought that this was a delightful design. It's rare to really see the joy that symbiotic architecture with nature can promote. This was an elegant design that demonstrates that joy of living with nature, not requiring a grand vista or dramatic landscape. Simple, clean proportions and warm wood interiors. Going into the multifamily housing, the winners here, the two winners were 1180 4th Street by Methune. The project was initiated as WRT Solomon. And this is for 150 low-income, very low-income, and formerly homeless families. As with other affordable housing in San Francisco, the tenants were selected by lottery. As we all know, San Francisco has acute housing needs, and in particular, many of the people in this project, particularly the homeless, have endeavored to provide a spectrum of user needs for that particular group. The intention here was really to create an environment to forge bonds of community and companionship within the project. The building's shared spaces are designed to bring residents together in ways both casual and intentional. And residents can meet each other, wait for rides, get their mail, and say hello to property management and play together after school in the generous lobby and courtyards. The jury believed that this project did some really interesting things architecturally, and that it was in a wonderful location for transit and accessibility. The project meets user needs in a beautiful and dignified way, also locating excellent design within a growing sea of very generic market rate housing projects. This project is a standout and contributes significantly to the Mission Bay urban fabric. Cloverdale 749, another multifamily housing project that adheres to a strategy to maximize land use and capitalize on zoning. Essentially, this building's 10,500 square feet pushes against floor area and density limitations determined by the lot size and location in Los Angeles. This basically is a project whose volume cannot expand further. The footprint and volume were determined by zoning and development needs, but within these parameters, the designers explored the threshold between the unit and the street, establishing a veil of transformable layers that promotes a hybridized relationship between private and public zones. The project's integration with its surroundings is upheld by carefully considered deck, window, and walkway placements so that vistas of the Hollywood sign and downtown LA are highlighted from within. The jury thought that this was a nice, understated design, rigorously developed, and definitely an upgrade in its context. Very well thought out, detailed, and elegant resolution from a simple, rather banal ship container reference. Really appreciated the layering of materials and transparency. And now we'll move into the specialized housing category, and you'll see how diverse this can be. And so we really encourage in thinking about what category you might apply for if you're thinking about submitting, that this is a category that the jury really does look at the meaning of the needs of the users in the context. And so the first one here is Commonwealth Honors College, which is University of Massachusetts Amherst. This was a new 500,000 square foot residential complex providing 1,500 new beds in 7 new buildings. The project brings together all classes of students in a mix of unit types. And 7 new buildings are organized around intimately scaled courtyards. The building steps down the hillside, creating a sense of an academic village with a series of open outdoor quads for students to gather. The interesting thing about this project is that it managed to feel very new. The interesting use of ribbon window as a data point to help pull together these different buildings. And the jury believed that this was a very rich mixture of campus buildings resembling in Italian Hilltown. It was very impressive that at every scale it was very well thought out and integrated, and they spent an incredible amount of time on careful spaces for social engagement. The Homeless Veterans Transitional Housing with the VA campus in West LA by Leo A. Daly. This is an interesting building in that it was a rehabilitation. It was a building that is at the U.S. Veterans Affairs Department West LA Healthcare Campus, and it was vacant for decades and falling into decay. Meanwhile, homelessness in Los Angeles County had become an epidemic with over 4,300 veterans living on the streets. So this is the first permanent supportive housing project on the campus using an emergent service model that has proven successful in creating lasting change.
You might have been muted.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear her.
Yep. Yes.
Okay. I will keep going. So this building has been fully restored to support an entirely new functional program of specialized accommodations. There's 55 apartments that provide residents with stable housing and all of the services needed to facilitate their recovery. The jury felt that this was a very incredibly thoughtful rehabilitation, both architecturally and programmatically. It's very difficult. It sells for rehab to compete with new construction in awards programs, but this one made a strong case. It's not only carefully considered in terms of the specific building users and what their therapeutic needs are, but every building element was analyzed and determined for a fit to the program. So this was a very thoughtful program. And the last one that is the AIA Housing Awards under specialized housing is the Whitetail Woods Regional Park Camper Cabins. This was another very interesting, very specialized project in that the newly constructed the Whitetail Woods Regional Park have these newly constructed camper cabins as a hallmark feature intended to create extended patron experiences within the park. And early community engagement validated this proposed concept based on the idea of touching the earth lightly like a treehouse, but accessible to everyone. And so these camper cabins reimagine the classic treehouse as a house in the trees, supported by a bathhouse a short distance away. This project was actually constructed through a local high school construction trades program with supervision from county workers to minimize costs. These cabins are the first 3 of 20 that will be constructed in the park master plan. They become a key feature and a community highlight. As a camper cabin, the structures are simple, efficient, and perfectly aligned with a camping experience. Because each cabin is situated in the woods, mechanical cooling has been eliminated, and each cabin uses natural ventilation to handle building comfort. The jury felt that this project has some beautiful simplicity. The colors, materials, and textures reinforce the undisturbed natural habitat. The light footprint is lovely, and the low impact on the environment is wonderful. And we're very impressed by the integration of high school VOTEC into this with very high quality detailing. And with that, I will turn this over to Rochelle to talk about the AIA HUD Secretary Awards.
Thank you, Jamie. We're delighted to be here and talk about the HUD AIA Secretary's Award because we are delighted that we can cooperate with AIA in this endeavor. As you can see, there are 4 categories in this the Secretary's Award: excellence in affordable housing design, creating community connection, community-informed design, and the Alan J. Rothman for housing accessibility. 3 of the 4 require affordability requirements. The housing accessibility does not. The HUD believes that good design is a cornerstone of solid homes and thriving communities. Each entry is judged for the success which the project has met its individual category and design requirements. The jury uses the project description provided by the applicant as a guide for its decision-making. You have to submit digital images, as you would in all award projects, and highlight the category requirements. So I'll start with the first one, the excellence in affordable housing design. The jury looks for responsiveness to client and occupant needs, affordability levels, provision of a long-term asset to the community, and demonstration of exceptional design skill. By the way, all the projects are, as Jamie mentioned, are looking to encourage energy reduction goals established by the AIA and the AIA 2030 commitment. I'll give you all 4 categories before we go to the specific winners for this year. The Creating Community Connection is the next, and it incorporates housing with other community amenities for the purposes of revitalization or planned growth. Submission for this category must be mixed use, including housing and mixed income, with a minimum of 20% of occupants at or below 80% of area income of an affordable housing finance vehicle. Acceptable mixed-use developments can combine any public, private, or nonprofit use with housing. Submissions should describe the occupant mix as well as funding sources, and in the case of housing finance programs, describe how the program requirements were met or surpassed. The jury looks for diversity and range of development of a mixture of uses beyond housing. Diversity of non-housing functions and occupant types. Development-wide design choices that support community interaction and enhance community networks such as transportation, access, public and shared spaces, safe and secure access and mobility, linkage to cultural and historic surroundings, and demonstration of exceptional design skill. The third is community-informed design. This is something a little different than the first 2. It's where we look for how communities are formed or participate with the physical communities that they rebuild or build, social structures and relationships that they may have weakened by outmigration, disinvestment, and the isolation of an inner city area. So award recognizes projects that focus on the design process as much as the resulting physical structures. Housing is not a required component of submissions, though developments must be lower or middle mixed income communities. All submissions must describe funding sources, neighborhood characteristics, and the community participation process. The jury looks for extensive participation of user or occupants in the design process, documentation of the participatory process, and demonstration of the architect's skills in felicitation. Felicitation. Description of the process's inclusivity, the resulting design that supports participating in the long-term use of architecture constituents, and demonstration of design skill and interpretation of community needs. And the last category is our Rothman Award. This one, unlike the others, is not about housing affordability, but how it provides accessibility for the disabled. It was named after Alan Rothman, who was a HUD senior policy analyst on housing disability issues. He devoted his life to improving housing accessibility for the disabled. He himself was born with cerebral palsy and overcame many obstacles. Projects eligible for this award must involve housing that demonstrates excellence in improving accessibility for people with ability constraints. Submissions must include housing elements that may extend beyond housing. The jury looks for responsiveness to users with disabilities, exemplary design, and technological responses, ability of individuals beyond the occupants to utilize facilities, documentation of accessibility, extent to which affordable techniques are addressed, and demonstration of exceptional design skill. Now we'll go to the winners. I'll describe each of the 4. The first in the excellence in affordable housing design is the Lakeside Senior Apartments, designed by David Baker Architects. And this project was in Oakland, California. It's located in a prime neighborhood on the banks of Oakland's Lake Merritt. It's now home to 91 very low-income and special needs homeless seniors, many of which have been displaced with the Bay Area's rapidly housing costs. The building has extensive on-site services and is designed to support independent living with strong transit connections to downtown Oakland and San Francisco. It has access to amenities, including a pharmacy and grocery. The high-density housing, 138 units per acre, provides indoor and outdoor community spaces at both the ground floor and upper levels. A central west-facing main courtyard opens visually towards the street and is warmed by afternoon sun. A rooftop suite of community spaces overlooks the lake, maximizing views for the most users. Designed with a complementary series of sustained strategies, the building is pending receipt of a LEED for homes. The second award is the Creating Community Connection. You'll hear about this later from Catherine Baker. It's the Dorchester Art and Housing Collaborative, designed by Land and Bone Baker Architects. It's a 32-unit mixed housing development and vibrant arts and cultural hub for Chicago's greater Grand Crossing neighborhood. It transformed the Dante Harbor townhouses, which were built by the Chicago Housing Authority in the early 1980s, vacated in 2007. I will go into more detail there since you'll hear about it in much more detail. So let's move on to the next, which is the Community-Informed Design. And this is the Disaster Recovery Round 2 in Houston. It was launched 5 years after Hurricane Ike devastated the Texas Gulf Coast to fill the gap in home repair and replacement and offer homeowners choice in the disaster recovery experience. It brought together design expertise of local design architects and insights from residents directly affected by the storm to build single-family, high-quality, cost-effective, sustainable houses that respect community interests and character. 6 target neighborhoods called community revitalization areas, or outreach areas, are in the city of Houston, and they were engaged through several public events which offered opportunities for a diverse group of residents, community leaders, city staff, and local designers to provide direct input. And the last is the Accessibility Award. And it isn't always provided, but this year was given to the Port Townsend residents in Port Townsend, Washington. It's a modest home on a small level lot in a small community arranged by a common garden with a built to accommodate a couple of whom one uses a power wheelchair. The house offers an accessible route from the house to the street, to the terrace, and onto the common garden space, as you can see, thus expanding the effective living space and facilitates daily strolls in the neighborhood. For a longer trip, the husband uses an accessible van. Now, let me just give you an example of what the jury said about these projects. The Lakeside Senior Apartments with David Baker Architects said the project brings dignity and beauty to people in their twilight years, most of whom have had very difficult and stressful lives. Dorchester, the community building, art building, does a remarkable job of transforming very generic public housing into handsome structures with landscaping. Disaster, the scale of this is very impressive and the approach monumental in terms of community engagement. And the accessible residence is there's a great attention to detail and the specific user needs are evident. It serves as a good neighbor, respecting scale and the materiality of its neighbors. They have successfully edited simple interiors and invite residential personalization. This project fits well in its context and is nicely designed, as you can see from these pictures. And now we'll move on.
Thank you, Rochelle, and we are going to hear from Jim Cutler to talk about his award-winning project in Newburgh residence.
Can everybody hear me okay? It's my first time in a webinar.
Yep, welcome.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Jim Cutler, architect on this project, and to give you I think I've got 10 minutes to talk about the project here. So what I can say is that like all of our work, we make a major effort to connect people to the living world. In the circumstances of this project, we had walked the land with the owners during a competition phase. they had chosen a hilltop position on their farm for their residence, and I felt that it wasn't the appropriate place. I felt that it would destroy the hilltop to put a building there. And walking down from the hill, I noticed an old logging pond, which was about 90% silted in, and suggested that we actually incorporate the house and the pond together as one thing. They agreed, we won the project, and we went ahead and then enlarged and reopened up the pond. And in that process, before we reflooded the pond, we built a building here. We built a small guest building and a garage, which I think are apparent from the drawings. The next thing I'm going to talk about is what we did to amplify human experience and connect these people to this living place. As you can see, there's a garage here where they would come in, drop their things because they are farmers, drop all their dirty clothes, come into their little little kitchen area, have a living dining area that was over the pond, and a master suite. A small separate guest building for their children because they're older, that is connected by a breezeway to the house. When guests arrive, however, they park at a parking area. I hope you guys can see my cursor at the end of this trail. And the intention was for the guests to be compressed by the forest. That is, that they would come through the forest, and the closer they would get to the house, the lighter it would get, and there would be some implication that something was going to happen over here, but not until they opened the front door would they really experience the pond. They would walk a little bit across it, but when that front door opened, they would get this sort of strong contrast between the density of the forest and the openness of the pond. We do that on a lot of our projects. We try to increase contrast, because when something that is dark, like the forest, is adjacent to something that's light, like the pond, the dark gets darker and the light gets lighter. And we've discovered that people experience the landscape in a much more powerful way when they have those strong contrasts and everything gets larger than life. So that was the effort on this building, was to have people experience this, and at the same time to foster life. We felt that water fosters life, that if we built this pond or reestablished it because it was 99% overgrown, that we would create a place for wildlife to come, and the people who live here could mark both their daily routines and the seasons of their life by the animals and fish, wildflowers, and amphibians that would appear seasonally or regularly on a daily basis. That's exactly what happened. I'll now take you through the visuals of this. This is coming through the forest from the trail up towards the entrance. As you can see, you're coming out of the dark to the light. Closer in, I've opened the door here, you're beginning to see the pond, but you're coming out of dark to light, the entrance, and then you arrive. This building was built with basically 3.5-inch glue lams, 3.5 by 10 glue lams, insulated surface above that. They were supported by these Corten steel beams with Corten steel columns that we did we welded up as in cross section like a plus sign, so that they could lace into the double channel steel at the top elegantly. We also did these doors that allowed people to go right out to the water, that lift straight up with big 300-pound counterweights built into the jamb of each door so that the door lifts seamlessly. The interiors are fairly simple. Again, here's the steel columns lacing into the double channels. Kitchen back here. Nothing really important to say on that. Fire, again, Corten steel, some madrona that was taken off the property for the mantle. And again, view from the kitchen out with the big door being pulled up. This is looking back towards the kitchen. Here's the building from the far end of the pond. Nice architectural photograph. This is the building at night. Again, the steel details were fairly carefully worked out. These columns actually are spaced up off the footing, the 4-inch thickness for the slab, so the slabs could be poured under them and the columns could appear to be sitting on the slab. This is a mix of the materials. We had pine, Douglas fir, board formed concrete, and Corten steel. And I'm trying to go fast because I was told to do this in 10 minutes. The main point here is that we really wanted to connect people to living systems. That when it rains, we shuttled all the water to a single not downspout, but a gutter that keeps water from landing on the entry walk, but spills it off in a great rivulet down into the pond itself, so that when you arrive in the rain, it's noisy, and you really know the rain's there because you have several hundred gallons a minute pouring off this downspout into the water. And so this is actually my last slide. The whole idea is, and like with all of our work, is to emotionally connect people in the most powerful way we can to the living world. This is one of many projects. For some reason, I guess this photograph made them premiated as an award winner. But if you look at all of our work, it all has to do with connection to living systems, developing that emotional connection. And the intention for developing the emotional connection is that once we learn to love the living world, then we protect it. Too many of us live in systems and in worlds and in environments where we make no connections to the living world, and consequently have no deep love of it. And the idea of protecting it is an abstract as opposed to an emotional experience. Our feeling is that it's very important for buildings to be sustainably green, but they need to be emotionally sustainable also, because they need to teach us to love the living world, and that's the only way we're going to save it. So that's my presentation.
Thank you so much, Jim. That was beautiful. And now we'll move on to Catherine Baker and hear about the Dorchester project.
Okay, hi. Let me see if I can get my view here. Well, that was incredibly beautiful, and I think we're running a little bit out of time, so I'm going to go through this fairly quickly, so everyone has some time for questions. So the quote from Theaster Gates, who was the artist who envisioned this project, talking about the full obliteration of neighborhoods is not natural, and his insistence that we dream what the neighborhood should be is, I think, a real starting off point for this project. So just quickly, this is the context of the project, and where you see these red X's, these are buildings that are not even stable enough that were they to burn, the firemen know not to go into them. So this is the context of the neighborhood where we are working. It's very, very depressing to think that your neighborhood is building by building disappearing. So the project starts out with Theaster Gates, who lives around the corner in his Rebuild Foundation, and how do you preserve, re-envision buildings in this underutilized, underserved neighborhood. Here's the townhouse project. As stated earlier, this was originally built in 1980 and then was abandoned about 10 years ago. You can see a lot of vacant lots around the site, and I don't know if you can see it up here. So this is the Stony Island Arts Bank up here, which you may have also heard about if you know anything about the Astor. In a broader context, if you look here, this is the Loop in Chicago. This is the north side where almost all the amenities are focused. This is where the project is located here on the south side. But it is within a context of a lot of other amenities that the Astor and Rebuild Foundation are creating. Here's the immediate neighborhood. Again, it's a lot of disinvestment, a lot of vacant lots. And then this is what the project looked like when we first saw it. Not too bad, but again, not really having any personal spaces, not really addressing the street or the rear. You can see there's some nice rear yards, some beautiful trees, but the buildings didn't really do anything to address those. So the project started out by really having year-long conversation with the residents and community about what the building could be. And there were coffee house events every month, and there was the art of placemaking. There were a lot of events just to talk about what did the community need. And there was a program in the summer. Kids plastered the sides of the building with what they thought it could be. So in the end, the Arts Center was the intervention that was decided upon, and so we laugh a little bit about like our affordable housing, and we get really one big move. And so this was our move. This was removing 4 townhouse units in the center and turning it into an art center with a large front porch that was fully accessible and ramps. And then this is what it is, that the art center now pulls the building from the front through the back, through the building into the front, and then also into the back, into the parking area in the backyard. It's fully glazed with acoustical tiles, just to make it very welcoming and open. Working with artists, you have to have a little bit of restraint and not trying to fill up the space and let the artists, as time goes by, personalize it. So the interior is a little bit less designed than maybe we would normally do, but again, it's intended over time to be modified by the artists. So here's the backyard, the porch, the roof extends out to create a porch on the back, and then the rear is landscaped very heavily for different uses. There is a mix of bedroom types and affordability. There's market rate, affordable, and CHA residents are coming back onto the site. Accessibility was a big issue, so we took 4 of the townhouse units there, which are highlighted here, and kind of flipped them sideways. So the bedrooms are now on the ground floor instead of the upper floor, and then there are 2 units on the second floor. This is what the interiors look like. And then these are some possibilities when you get these really damaged buildings. Instead of trying to replace everything, you can just start to remove things. So we looked at removing some of the floor joists and opening them up into more loft-like spaces. And here's one that's finished. As stated earlier too, everything here is done under AIA guidelines, and we really looked at energy efficiency, and these were designed to Energy Star standards. And then this is what the project looks like now. And again, the most important feature of this is how it's being used. And it was determined that there weren't really any great dance spaces on the south side. So this was designed to be a sprung floor. So you see Joffrey Ballet actually comes down here and gives classes. And it's appropriate for professional dance troupes to come down and practice. Again, they're acoustical tiles, so sound and music is also encouraged. And then these are the list of partners so far. This space is programmed almost 100% of the time, which is a real success in our mind. And then again, just welcoming space in the evening. And then that's my final slide. So thank you. It's a real honor to be included in this list of all these other housing award winners. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Catherine. And now I think that we have a little bit of time for questions, and Tom, if you want to let us know if there are any.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Yeah, thank you, everybody. That was really great to hear from all of you. We had one question. Is the for the HUD award program, is it limited to only one project per category?
Yes, that's true.
Yep.
Yes,
Okay.
one.
And is there a reason why you don't have more than one?
That's been historically how it's been done. I don't think there is the rules of the award.
Yeah. Okay. And so I was wondering, I really loved what Jim Cutler was saying about the emotional connection to nature. Have you guys been seeing across all the different categories more connection to nature, even amongst the multifamily affordable housing type projects?
This is Jamie, and I would say yes, and also that's something that at least this jury focused on quite a bit in terms of the context. We're seeing quite a few projects do great work in terms of bringing the indoor outdoors and bringing the outdoor indoors, so having that connectivity. I think that Jim's project was very unique in how beautifully situated and well thought out that was.
Great. What kind of community involvement have you seen on some of the awarded projects? Was it community involvement with the residents or the neighborhoods?
Well, as you can see from the many different scales, the meeting user needs is very interesting because all the categories are so different. So what we're seeing, of course, with the 1 and 2 family homes is a deep conversation with those specific clients. With the community engagement, it's dependent on the scale. So the disaster recovery round, for instance, that was an immense engagement process over a very large tract of land, including many, many neighbors and community groups. And then some of the projects specifically looked at the needs, for instance, with the San Francisco project, 1184th Street, of the specific needs of the homeless families in San Francisco. And so I think what the jury looks at is what is appropriate in terms of engagement and making sure that it's as broad as possible and really getting voices to the table that aren't typically at the table.
That's great. And can you remind us what the deadline was?
The deadline for this year has not yet been announced. Last year it was November 20th. So we expect it will be around the same time this year, and you should expect to see announcements of the awards coming out, I think, in August, so that people can be prepared for that November deadline.
All right, that's great. Thank you all very much. We have run out of time. This concludes today's webinar. Thank you all for joining us. You should see in your chat box a link, and you will also receive an email within an hour to the survey and report form to receive your credits. Thank you again to Jamie and everybody else for coming to share this wonderful work with us.
Thank you, everybody.